Right now it is time, once again, for us to travel to the great state of Maine. It is time for the Media Beat with David Tereshchuk. David, of course, joins us on a Friday morning. David has his own website, which is called themediabeat.us. He is also a PBS television correspondent reporting on ethics and belief. And we say hello once again up to the state of Maine to David Tereshchuk. Good morning, David.
Yes, hello. I'm not reporting in from, as you say, not reporting in from my normal perch in the media capital of the world, New York City, but out among the songful birds of the great state of Maine. Very happy to be joining the sharply observant Marshall Miles from there.
Occasionally sharply observant.
Oh, ever sharper, I would say.
All right. Well, we're gonna. I want to go international first, and then there's some local things. I don't understand why people seem surprised about what's going on in Afghanistan is going on with the Taliban once again, moving forth like they have done time and time and time again over the years. But this time the difference, the Taliban is also making deals with some of the other powerful people who run the different tribes in Afghanistan. I just don't see what people thought was going to happen. I think Joe Biden made the decision. We had enough lives lost. We spent enough money. We've been training them for I don't know how many years. It's time for us to end. And yes, we're going to try to get as many people out as we can. I just think that it was a right decision, and the Taliban was going to do this anyway, sooner or later.
Well, yes, Biden has often said that he wanted to end the forever wars, and Afghanistan, of course, is the main forever war. Ever since September, October of 2001, American troops have been in there, and the choice of September 11th this year, 2021, as the time to be finally out, a choice that Biden made, has peculiar resonance, of course, because it was 9/11 that took us into that long, protracted war, and all the signs are well known. How to read Afghan intelligence is been well established. Whether you can gather intelligence effectively or not is a different question. If you're an intelligence agency from the outside, that seems to have been a problem throughout the 20 years we've been there. But as you say, even for an outsider with no intelligence resources at hand, it would have seemed perfectly obvious that as the date got closer and closer, the Taliban would use this as an opportunity for grabbing as much territory as they possibly can. And that's exactly what they've been doing. Taking huge swathes of the country now, and not just the countryside anymore, but major cities. Kandahar, one of the most important cities in the country, is just the latest to fall into the hands of the Taliban. And yes, I think something about that date and the fact that the president had finally made a decision that eluded previous presidents must have made a lot of people indulge in some wishful thinking. There was a deal, at least between the United States and the Taliban, a deal negotiated in Qatar. But of course, it had Taliban are notorious for not keeping agreements, and that's exactly what they've done here. They've regarded this opportunity of United States and NATO withdrawal to up the ante and, as I say, grab as much territory as it possibly can in the hopes, one imagines, of reaching a more favorable deal, in their view, with the government, the existing government, the government that the United States and others have poured so much money into establishing, and therefore, having a say. I mean, it's perfectly possible that their ultimate goal, of course, is to completely defeat that government and its armed forces. And it shows, the recent events have been showing that that's a far from unrealistic expectation. The performance of the American-trained and American-aided Afghan military forces has not been stellar over the last few months, as this Taliban advance has happened so often. No will to fight has been shown by the Afghani forces, and the press has been, of course, turning to well-experienced military people and intelligence people, and some experienced American politicians in the matter too. I was listening to Leon Panetta yesterday. All of what's happening now was perfectly open to prediction, and just because we know we have to get out, rushing out this way has proven to be the foolhardy process that anybody, I think, could have foreseen that it would be. And here we are in grave danger of leaving a lot of our own people and people amongst the Afghani population who have helped the Americans and the NATO countries who've been staying to the end as well, abdicating a kind of moral responsibility that we surely have to those Afghanis who helped us. And we usually mentioned first in the list are the interpreters, but there's a whole host of Afghanis who have had their own lives and their own activities, their own professional work invested in supporting the American presence. And of course they are in enormous danger from the Taliban. And late in the day as it is, the Biden administration has recognized that they and indeed the American diplomatic presence itself now need serious protection. And 3,000 American troops are going to go in the opposite direction. They're going to go back to Afghanistan and perform that role, including a good number of Marine commandos. So one can't help feeling that this was a lack of foresight, and I suspect an attack of wishful thinking in high places. And that's the situation we've ended up in.
And I want to switch back to something that I saw last night, and it was a clip that was on the BBC, by the way, and it was down south, and it was a doctor who was surrounded by people protesting masks, and the people said to the doctor, "We know who you are, and we know where you live." Our country is in such a weird position, David. This is a doctor, a guy that dedicates his life to helping people beat disease, defeat disease, and live as healthy as possible. And for people upset because their kids might have to wear a mask in school to toss around threats like this, we are just at a total different a level in this country. And other countries, if they see that clip, and obviously they will because it was on the BBC, must just wonder what the hell is going on.
Yes, there's a strong strain of, along with the notion of individual liberties, there's a strong strain of self-destructiveness, I think, in a lot of fundamentalist thinking. Because in a way, that's what we've got. I mean, I'm not directly equating anti-maskers with the Taliban, but I think you get the idea. If people are so fundamentally wedded to a principle that overrides all other principles, then you're dealing with a situation not far away from insanity. If you're prepared to take your belief in individual rights to the point of saying, yes, my right to make myself sick and possibly die is the most important right here, but it doesn't, in any sensible society, it wouldn't extend to putting at risk other people's health and life. And yet that's the situation in which you have. And along with it, of course, as in this terrible case you're quoting demonstrates, along with it comes a streak of violence and a desire for retribution and punishment of anyone who disagrees with you, that is very much a marker of America's cultural and political degeneration, I think. There was a time, I mean, we often have to go back these days to the words of Rodney King, the black man beaten up by Los Angeles cops. And it's a plaintive cry now. It seems to sound ever more plaintive every time it's requoted. Can't we just get along? And indeed, it seems like this is a society that in times of great pressure, while you might expect it to come together in the face of a terrible enemy like the COVID-19 virus, what in fact it's done is illustrate the fractures and the fractiousness of our population.
All right, let's switch away from this and let us bring in some good news here.
Yeah, it's my fanfare for good journalism, and there has been some good journalism in recent times. There's a lot of good work being done, but I wanted to single out a publication that's not what you might immediately expect me to be lauding as a piece of journalism, because it's more of it's certainly pigeonholed as more of a literary journal than a journalistic organization, though of course being literary and devoting yourself to books, as the New York Review of Books certainly does, you might expect its field to be purely literary. But one of the remarkable things about NYRB is that it occasionally, in fact more than occasionally, quite often, devotes many pages to the study of one single issue and puts it in the hands of very good writers, very good analysts, and we end up with some good, what I would call straight reporting journalism, as opposed to opinion journalism or literary review journalism. And in this case, there's a wonderful article just recently by Stephen Simon of MIT. Very often they will put these tasks in the hand of well-proven academics who are specialists in certain areas. And Stephen Simon of MIT, who's really been a Middle East specialist most of his career, and Jonathan Stephen of the International Institute of Strategic Studies have been looking into the problem of domestic militia and the threat that they are in the United States, and likely ways to make them less of a threat. And the piece is well worth reading. It takes some time, but it's very thorough. It's a very balanced assessment, treating, and what's so interesting about it is it treats the presence and activities of mostly right-wing extremist militia in this country as a strategic issue, a matter of national security. And it's well worth study. It's one of those pieces that make you think, there's some very considered thinking gone on here, and there are interesting recipes brought up for how to counter the threat of the militia, and it makes sound sense, and it's very realistic. It does a serious review of the sort of ideas that are brought up, and takes looks in a particularly askance way at those people who are now suggesting that the militia problem is so great, legislative change and even law enforcement change in terms of tough measures to deal with them are in order. And in a very balanced way, it points out the ways to achieve success against this threatening movement. And just to quote the very end of it, I think you'll be seeing you'll get a sense of its sort of balanced reasoning. And I'll quote directly: if U.S. law enforcement can substantially stop infiltration, then this means the infiltration by right-wing extremists into our own military and law enforcement ranks, which is a demonstrated and well-proven problem. And if it can generate better intelligence for tactical warnings about what the militia groups are up to, as we evidently so evidently failed to do in January the 6th. And now we're very slowly, after the fact, of course, finding people being sent to jail because of their participation in the right-wing extremist attack on our own capital. Then you will see these authors argue that the right-wing threat is not likely, and this is a sort of realistic assessment, not likely to be more resistant than that of other lethal groups. And here they list mafia families, spy rings, the Hells Angels, all of these groups, these dangerous groups that have been dismantled. One search warrant, one wiretap, and one indictment at a time. And it will be interesting to see how the courts deal over the next few months with the Capitol rioters, who are one instance of these militias at work, see how they get treated by the law enforcement and criminal justice system. Several who have been sent to jail already. These are mainly the early ones who've been pleading guilty. But we'll see the courts deal with them over the next few months, and we'll see on a daily basis, I think, reporting that shows how our fairly resilient law enforcement system gets to deal with one of the most appalling examples of, if you can call them this, right-wing crazies trying to get the upper hand in our democratic society.
We're speaking, of course, with David Tereshchuk. This is the Media Beat. David joins us every week at this time. TheMediaBeat.us is his website. Pretty interesting yesterday, as one of the conservative appointed judges on the Supreme Court basically blocked something from going to the Supreme Court, and that is a major college was suing, saying that people were suing, saying that they couldn't institute a vaccine ban on students who took the vaccine. And this very conservative Supreme Court judge, and this is something that I didn't realize happened, basically blocked it from going forward because cases like this, different Supreme Court judges are handed authority to see whether something should make it to the Supreme Court or not. I think that is a good sign, which should help vaccinations across the country, in colleges, in schools, and it kind of sets a benchmark. And it's interesting because at the same time, David, we also found out that when you look right down at it, in our country, 51% of the surge comes from 8 states. That's it in this country. 8 states out of 50 are responsible for the major surge in this country of the COVID variant.
That's a remarkable itemization of where the problem lies, and it's a sign, I fear, of the very fractiousness I was referring to earlier. We now have red states as the locus of fundamentalist, as I say, thinking about individual liberties versus the public good. And guess what? They are paying the public health costs for that, and they are the locuses of surges, with the Delta variant in particular leading the onslaught of this much changed disease. We're dealing with, as we've said several times in recent weeks, we're now dealing with a different enemy that has to be handled differently and confronted differently. And although vaccination has gotten to a respectably high level now amongst the population as a whole, there are still these very substantial pockets around the country where that's not the case. And at the same time, we're dealing with a variant, as I say, a new enemy, an enemy that is so changed that it needs to be handled differently. And that the simple measures that we thought we no longer needed, like masking up fully, is now needed again. And it is very interesting that the drumbeat for not just vaccination, but a return to using masks where necessary, is steadily growing, and we're finding that local jurisdictions, even when state governors are making it an offense to require masks, the mask mandate is now being banned by states like Texas, Florida, and Arizona. And yet at the same time, you're getting, sometimes in the most surprising places and with the most surprising people, this continuing surge that is both pro-vaccine and, where necessary, pro-masking too. Justice Amy Barrett, as you just referred to, has actually denied an appeal from the Indiana University students who were fighting against a mandate for them to have the COVID-19 vaccine or otherwise not be able to attend the college. And that's a sign of the times, I think. In a way, I suppose we have to regard it as hopeful in the fact that even in areas of our leadership where we have been led to expect pretty much nothing but a right-wing tilt because of the number of jurists who have been appointed during the 4 years of the Trump administration, for instance, at all levels of federal courts, but including, of course, 3 justices on the Supreme Court, including Amy Barrett. You might expect them to join the right-wing tendency as a whole, and here we have a case where that's not what's happening. Common sense seems to be asserting itself in places where we might not have expected it, but I think we ought to be recognizing that good sense can prevail even in prejudiced minds, given enough of a serious challenge to the nation's health as this COVID this COVID epidemic that is, we thought, I guess many of us thought in the early summer, might be on its way out, but it's going to be a longer struggle than that, and it's good to see common sense prevailing.
And as someone who knows the UK very well, I was shocked to see the story about the mass shooting that took only 6 minutes in Plymouth.
Yeah.
What's your feeling on that? I mean, it's something I guess I just didn't expect that to happen in the UK.
Well, no, we've had some occasions where it's happened before, and I mean, no country is invulnerable to that kind of horrible outbreak of mass violence, and I can think back to in my own home, the home region, the home country, out of the various countries that make up the United Kingdom, the country of Scotland, had a terrible case of a primary school, elementary school shooting, and that was the occasion. It was now well over 25 years ago. I'm blanking on the specific date itself, but a long time ago, and that was an occasion for a lot of deep thinking in the United Kingdom about gun ownership and gun control, and there was a lot of tightening up, and we haven't had many instances since. But this one is a devastating one, the one in Plymouth in the south of England, right on the coast, a naval town. And it's shocking to have seen it happen. The response was quick and decisive. It was legal law enforcement agencies. But the very fact that it happens at all is one of those sobering events that make you realize that our safety most of the time is dependent entirely upon the goodwill of the citizenry itself, and every now and again that's bound to be broken by individuals who are, for whatever reason, bent on destruction. And in this case, it appears to be a 22-year-old individual. As so often in American cases, there are young people involved in this, and that is even more dispiriting.
And one final thing, David, just to get your opinion, the Census Bureau is starting to come out with some of their figures And it really is, you can see a very dynamic shift in the breakdown of the population in the United States. And it answers the question why voting rights are being assailed, because it really is. I think we're right in the middle of a dramatic shift, a 20-year shift in what the population breakout in this country is going to be.
Yeah, I guess you can see that if you're a white individual and you feel as if you're in some way your privileges, although many white people don't believe that they exist in a privileged state. The fact of the matter is that I'm afraid the white people are indeed in a position of privilege. There's no getting away from that simple and well-demonstrated fact. But what's happening now, and I guess it will be seen by people of that kind of outlook as a disturbing trend, that the very size of the white population as a whole is now shrinking. It must be the first time in the history of this country that that's happening. And it's a reality that needs to be taken into account. One of the matters that is reinforced, one of the absolute truths, so much so that it's often taken as a truism, but because it's a truism, we shouldn't overlook it or downplay it. Is the fact that we are a nation of immigrants, and of course I speak as one myself. And I remember one of the really remarkable things I remember watching on television when I was still living in Britain and not entertaining any thoughts of coming to the United States, but very struck by this American documentary that played on British television. Its name was, the title of the documentary was A Nation of Immigrants, and that has always been something that America felt itself to be proud of. It is a remarkable institution. I mean, there's been some downside costs to that fact, that particular identity of America is consisting of people who came into it. And the downside, of course, is for the indigenous population who were treated so badly by the incomers, murderously, in fact, and unfairly in every way. But one of the remarkable things about the country is that it is made up not of a single strain of humanity, but a whole mingled thread of people from many parts of the world coming to this one country and establishing it, and now that process continues. There are more and more people coming in who want to be Americans, and that in itself is a good thing. And how to handle it is the challenge, and we may as well challenge it in full awareness of the facts on the ground. And the 2020 census belatedly now shows us those facts on the ground.
It's always great to speak with you, David. We'll check with you next week. Have a great weekend.
You too.
David Tereshchuk with the Media Beat here on Robin Hood Radio. Of course, you can find David at his website, themediabeat.us, and also at robinhoodradio.com. Click on demand. Click on David Tereshchuk with the Media Beat.